The 777 is used a lot in FlightGear for all sorts of flights. The AutoPilot can be pretty useful for that, so let's see how to use it. The AutoPilot of the 777 can be controlled completely using only the panel in the 3D cockpit. You can find it in the middle of the cockpit by either zooming out a lot in the default pilot view, or by moving around the camera a little in a different cockpit view. On the very left of the AutoPilot you'll see this AP button. That's the main button to switch the AutoPilot on or off. It's not lit up at the moment, so the AutoPilot is currently off. Right next to that you'll find the auto throttle arm switches. These allow or disallow the auto throttle to control the engine power. To use the auto throttle, these need to be flipped up before you can click the auto throttle button, which you can find here. Once the auto throttle is enabled, the plane will try to hold the speed you entered here. By turning this knob you can change that speed. You can do this by hovering your mouse over the knob and using the scroll wheel. You can switch between IAS, indicated airspeed, or max speeds by clicking this button here. Further to the right you'll find the LNAV and VNAV buttons. They allow the plane to fly the route manager's route if it's entered correctly. LNAV will fly you in the right direction, and VNAV should hold the altitude you've entered. Below LNAV and VNAV there's a flight level change button. This one is meant for climbing and descending. It will make the plane climb or descend until it's reached the altitude you've set on the altitude hold, which we'll look at in a minute. And next to that you'll find the heading hold and bank limit selector. Click this hold button to make the plane hold its current heading. If you then want to turn left or right, scroll over the word cell to change the heading. Scroll over the outer knob if you want to change the banking limit of the aircraft. Auto usually works fine though. Over here you'll find the vertical speed hold. Scroll over this knob to make the plane hold a specific vertical speed. It will do so until the plane has reached the set altitude. It's that simple. Altitude hold. This is the place where you set the altitude you want your plane to be holding, or climbing or descending to. Changing the value here does not immediately affect the plane's behavior. After setting the target altitude here, you still have to click either the flight level change button or set the vertical speed. By switching this outer knob to 1000 instead of auto, you can scroll through the altitudes more quickly, which can be very useful. And finally here are the Localizer and Approach buttons. The Localizer mode can be used for VOR and ILS and probably even more navigation methods I don't yet know about. The approach mode is meant for ILS. After pressing these buttons, the plane might not instantly change its attitude. It will wait until it has found the localizers needed to fly to a VOR or line up with an ILS. So be sure you're in the range of the radio station you're using before clicking these buttons. So now let's do a quick example of a manual takeoff and then switching to the AutoPilot for our climb. Before takeoff, set your AutoPilot correctly, so you don't have to fiddle with it in the air before enabling it. A speed of 250 knots will do. Be sure to flip up the AT arm switches. Click the heading hold button to set it to your current heading and change the target altitude accordingly. Now you're good to go for takeoff. Once you're a few hundred feet up in the air, enable the auto throttle. This will likely slow your engines down a little to a suitable climbing thrust. Adjust the plane's pitch a bit so that you're still slowly building up some speed. Once you're on a stable climb, click the heading hold selector one more time, then set the flight level change button and enable the AutoPilot. If all went well, you should now be climbing steadily until you've reached your target altitude. Keep watching your speed as you're climbing though. If you're starting to slow down, disengage the AutoPilot and re-establish on a safe climb before trying the flight level change mode again. The plane will automatically disengage the AutoPilot if you're about to stall, in which case you should gently lower the nose until you're starting to build up speed again. You can make turns by simply scrolling over the select knob to turn to a specific heading. And that will do it for this episode of FlightGear How-To. I hope this will help you further in the 777 cockpit. If you have any more questions, be sure to leave a comment below. And of course I hope to see you back here for the next videos.